Fever 1793, Chapter 14. September 12th through 20th, 1793. Hot, dry winds forever blowing, dead men to the graveyards going, constant hearses, funeral verses, oh, what plagues there is no knowing. Philip Freneau, Pestilence, written during the prevalence of a yellow fever, 1793. Is she dead? Go away, Barney, she's not ready for you. I've got to take the bodies to the pit before I get my soup. If she's dead, hand her over. I'm hungry. I opened my eyes to see who was talking. A large woman holding a candle bent over me, and a man waited in the shadows. The light from the candle burned my eyes. I heard moans on both sides of me and the sound of hammers and saws in the distance. Where am I thought. I was so cold, colder than New Year's Day. I closed my eyes. She looks dead, Barney said. His voice faded away. I slept, and the fever fired my dreams with terror. I was back by the chestnut tree. Dust billowed. As I breathed, dirt caked my throat and settled in my lungs. The road was crowded with carriages pulled by wild-eyed horses that crashed into each other as everyone fought to escape. What am I supposed to do? I cried to people rushing by. I don't know what to do. I ran across the meadow and came upon a troop of soldiers marching, with a drummer boy and a flag bearer in front of me. Look at me, I called, holding grandfather's watch. Tell me what to do. Arrêtez-vous, shouted a soldier. Arrêtez-vous. I don't understand you, I said. I don't speak French. I walked toward the men. Grandfather appeared by the flag bearer. He wore a bloody shirt. He did not recognize me, and he shouted to his troops. Ready? Grandfather drew his sword from the scabbard and held it in the sky. He looked at me and narrowed his angry eyes. Aim! The men aimed their muskets at me. Grandfather slashed the sword through the air. Fire! No! I jolted awake. Moonlight spilled in through the open windows. I rubbed my eyes, trying to sort out where the nightmare stopped and the waking world began. My sheets and shifts were soaked through with sweat, blood, and the foul-smelling black substance that marked a victim of yellow fever. Yellow fever. There were beds on either side of me. To my left slept a young woman, her hair in two dirty braids. To my right lay a figure covered with a sheet, a corpse. Who was dead and who was alive? Was it grandfather? Was it mother? I reached for the sheet, but stopped. My head spun as if I were on a rope swing, twisting dizzily. I closed my eyes until the sensation faded. Taking a deep breath, I lifted the sheet at the side of the body. The hand was thin and the fingers slender, with tapered nails and fine bones. It was not the fleshy, scarred hand of grandfather, nor the work-worn hand of my mother. My eyes filled with tears. Two orderlies walked to the bed of the corpse. They spoke quietly in French. Each man took one end of the dead woman's mattress and lifted, then carried the body away. Just as I slipped back toward sleep, the men brought back the mattress. Empty. When I woke, the tall windows were shuttered to keep out the sunlight. Steam fairly rose from the reeking bodies of the sick, and sweat dripped off the faces of the nurses and orderlies. The room reminded me of the Ogilvy mansion, only larger. The flowing draperies, expensive carpets, and hand-carved furniture that surely belonged here had been removed. What remained were enormous rooms with high ceilings and chandeliers that reflected the light like 1,000 mirrors. Oh my, now that's looking much better, isn't it? You've beat the Grim Reaper, have you, lassie? A large woman strode to my bedside. She set a tray on the floor. I'm Mrs. Flagg, and I'm here to care for you, she said. We weren't sure you would make it through the night, but that's past now. It's time for you to eat something, so we can get you home to your loved ones. Mrs. Flagg helped me sit up. Your granddad has been waiting this whole time for you. Quite a handsome man, isn't he? A captain in the army, he told me. I'll sneak him in here soon as I get a chance. Now drink this. She held a bowl of beef broth to my lips. I pushed the bowl away. How is he? How did we get here? She set the bowl in her lap. He doesn't have yellow fever, if that's what you're asking. Told me his heart was acting up in the heat and he had a bit of a cough, perhaps. He's a strong man. Imagine a man his age carrying someone like you all that distance. I relaxed. If grandfather was feeling well enough to tell exaggerated stories and charm Mrs. Flagg, then there was little to worry about. I reached for the bowl. The salty broth warmed my insides. Thank you, I said. That was delicious. Mrs. Flagg set the bowl on the floor. She wrung out a rag that had been soaking in soapy water and wiped my face and hands before lifting my dirty hair to wash my neck. My mother always said a good wash was the best medicine. If you keep the broth down, we will let you eat a bit of rice for dinner. Now you rest a spell. I'll be back soon, when the doctor will have a look at you when he's making his rounds. Oh, my gracious, look who's coming, and me wearing this filthy dress. Grandfather. He never looked so handsome or brave as standing in the middle of the sick room, his eyes searching all the beds until he found me. I felt like I was 6 years old again, and Grandfather was marching in a parade. He bowed to Mrs. Flagg and sat on the edge of my bed. What are you doing in bed, girl? You look healthy enough to jump up and give poor Mrs. Flagg here a hand, Grandfather said as he kissed my cheek. Mrs. Flagg wagged her finger at him. Don't you be giving her any ideas, Captain. What this young thing needs is rest and nourishing food, and she'll get both of them here, or my name isn't Bridget Flagg. Bridget, exclaimed Grandfather, a melodious name for a beautiful lady. I rolled my eyes while Mrs. Flagg giggled. Excuse me, I said, interrupting the two of them. Where are we, and how long have we been here? Mrs. Flagg was all business. No one has told you? Poor little chickie, you're at Bush Hill, and a good thing it is you are here. Bush Hill? We must leave, I said as I pulled the blanket off my legs. We must go. This is a dangerous place, Grandfather. Take me home. I tried to stand, but my legs gave way. Now, Mattie, Grandfather stammered. Mrs. Flagg took me by the shoulders and sat me back down. Before I knew it, I was lying down with a sheet tucked so tightly over me that I couldn't move. That will be enough standing up, young miss, said Mrs. Flagg firmly. You've nothing to fear. Bush Hill is now a respectable place. Your grandfather was a clever, kind man to bring you here. The city had turned a mansion on Bush Hill into a hospital for fever victims. According to the gossips, Bush Hill was one step away from hell, filled with dead bodies and criminals who preyed on the weak. It was a place to stay away from, not a place where a young girl should lay about and sip broth, even if her grandfather was mooning over her nurse. Mrs. Flagg lifted a mug of cool tea to my mouth. You listen to me. This here Bush Hill is not the same Bush Hill of last week. Mr. Stephen Gerard, Lord bless his name, has taken over and turned this into a right proper hospital. All them thieving scoundrels have been driven off. You're lucky you were brought here. We have doctors, nurses, medicine, food, everything a fever victim needs, and we have enough problems without you running off the ward. Grandfather coughed, and I handed him my tea. He emptied the cup and handed it back to me. Mattie knows all about Stephen Gerard, he told Mrs. Flagg. He has visited our fine establishment several times, and indeed it has been my honor to break bread with him. Break bread? Since when did he call stuffing down Eliza's cinnamon rolls in the same room as Stephen Gerard, and 20 others, breaking bread? Grandfather did admire Mr. Gerard. That much was true. Gerard was a rich Frenchman with a finger in every pie. He was a merchant, an importer, and a banker. But what did Mr. Gerard have to do with Bush Hill? He came through here like a hurricane, he did, Mrs. Flagg explained. He fired the slovenly devils who caused all the trouble. Then he ordered repairs on the water pumps, hired good folks like me, and laid in supplies. We even have a fancy French officer, Dr. Devise, who supervises the patients, and Mrs. Seville, for our matron. With a name like Bridget, you are surely not French, are you, Mrs. Flagg? Asked Grandfather. Good gracious, no, what a question, laughed Mrs. Flagg. I can barely make out what they're saying half the time, but they work hard and the pay is good, and I'll tell you this. She leaned closer and lowering her voice. You'll hear folks say the doctor Rush is a hero for saving folks with his purges and bloodletting, but I've seen different. It's these French doctors here that know how to cure the fever. I don't care if Mr. Rush did sign the Declaration of Independence. I wouldn't let him and his knives near me. I shivered as I remembered the blood Dr. Kerr had drained from Mother. Maybe Grandfather should return to the house and bring her here. What if Dr. Kerr bled her too much? Does Mother know I'm here? I asked. Grandfather sat down on my bed. It's quite a topsy-turvy time we're in, my sweet. We've gone from home nearly 5 days now. What? 5 days? Mrs. Flagg gently pushed me back on the pillow. Easy, child. Much has happened, Grandfather continued. Once you were installed here, I rode into the city to see Lucille to tell her where you were. He paused to cough. I found the house locked up tight as you like. Knowing her, she rode out to the Ludingtons to join us. I sent a letter yesterday. Mrs. Flagg picked up a tray. There you go. Everything is right with the world. You might not hear back from your mother for a while, though. The post has become most unreliable. She said something else, but I could only hear buzzing. My eyes closed again against my will. "Now look what you've done, Captain," Mrs. Flagg exclaimed. "Here we are chatty like magpies, and your darling granddaughter still so sick." Grandfather patted my head. "Sleep well, child." And that's all for now. You'll have to come back for chapter 15.